What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review a 2020 album by Jelly Roll. Basically, this project is called The Beautiful Disaster, and it came out in the winter of 2020. Now, this is the first of two albums that Jelly Roll put out in 2020. The second one is Self-Medicated, and that one came out in the fall of 2020. I'm eventually going to get to that one, but this is a particular hit album. But A Beautiful Disaster is a particular hit album because it was one of the ones that helped kick off Jelly. It was one of the ones that helped kick off Jelly Roll's current kind of country music and hip hop. It was one of the albums that helped kick off Jelly Roll's current status as like a country singer and stuff like that. I mean, this is not a full-blown country album. It's just kind of the concept that was starting to meld those particular territories pretty well. It was starting to meld those particular territories pretty well. As this is a strange music album, so this is on Tech N9ne's label, which is pretty dope to get that particular concept. It's just kind of concept that's not as full-blown much of a rap album as it is comparatively to like a relative underground kind of pop album. It's an interesting pitch. It's an interesting pitch just because this has Tech N9ne affiliation on there, although not very much, but still enough to be able to say that this has a Tech N9ne particular type sound just within a pop type sense. If you're looking for like a pop artist that kind of has like some Tech N9ne type feels and stuff like that, this would be a great album to kind of kick things off with. And this is an interesting kind of pitch because this is where Jelly Roll was back in the early COVID days of early 2020 as far as that pitch kind of happened. Originally, he was just kind of Jelly Roll was not the huge superstar that he is today as of 2024, but it's still a pretty good concept because this is a pretty revolutionary album. I think that this is definitely a groundbreaking type one. Has some of his initial hits on here like Creature, I Need You, Nothing Left at All are some good ones just within that particular pitch. Tears Could Talk. All the singles do a pretty excellent job. They just have a great they just have a great showcase of the sound that Jelly Roll would definitely become throughout the rest of this particular decade as far as that pitch kind of. They just have a great showcase of the sound that Jelly Roll would become throughout this particular decade as far as that pitch kind of has with it. Just some awesome stuff here to kind of get that. But this is definitely a brewing type project, but it is damn near a classic. I definitely feel like for recent times in terms of what I've seen in rap music and underground pop music in the 2020s, this is definitely probably one of the best albums of the decade just in terms of that particular pitch. Now I know that that's arguable just because Jelly Roll is not really like a huge kind of ubiquitous kind of household name sensation, but this is still a pretty good concept to kind of see him in some of his earlier days. I mean, obviously albums like Ballads of the Broken and Witsit Chapel. Obviously, albums like Ballads of the Broken and Witsit Chapel are a little bit more of ones that have a little bit more commercial type appeal and this overall affability in terms of household name kind of territory. But this is definitely not one to just shake a stick at or something like that. This is definitely a pretty potent type one. Did a lot of damage and this just has some excellent type stuff on here. I definitely think that Tech N9ne should have been on here a little bit more. It just works pretty well just within that pitch. This has that standard kind of dreary after hours kind of malaise that are on a lot of Tech N9ne songs throughout the 2000s and 2010s as far as that pitch can happen with this. Just some great stuff here. Just kind of see this is definitely a breadwinning type album and definitely a groundbreaking type album and a trailblazing type album just within that particular sense. Did a lot of damage. I think it'll start to be seen as more of this decade starts to pass. This was kind of a big deal once we see more of what Jelly Roll can do and just stuff like that. It has to suppose because he's really making a lot of noise right now. He's definitely all over the radio around my neck of the woods as far as that particular pitch kind of has with it. So this is some good stuff. But it's just interesting that this briefly had Tech N9ne affiliation because he always has been kind of like Juggalo type music and more underground type pop just within that sense, hanging out with folks like Tech N9ne, Lil White, some of those type folks, Struggle Jennings, some of those particular type folks as far as that pitch kind of happens. Just some good stuff. And all those folks are kind of on this particular album. So we'll go ahead and talk about the singles here. Basically, there were four of them, at least music videos. The four singles were Creature, I Need You, Nothing Left at All, and Tears Could Talk. So we're gonna go ahead and talk about some of these. So Creature's a pretty highlighted one. This is definitely like a dreary kind of day after hours ruminating of a song. I had to say, definitely appreciate this one. The song has some good workaday malaise about it. I would definitely have to say, and this is just some overcast kind of grogginess. I would definitely feel like, and this is definitely like a Waffle House kind of bop, typical of like Tech N9ne type fare and Chris Calico type fare, just something of that relative pitch to kind of get that particular sound. It's basically like an underground pop type tune. I'd have to say, if you like Tech N9ne's type sound, stuff like that, sort of Tech N9ne type tunes that he was doing in the 2000s, 2010s, some of that type of stuff, this is just like a more pop type variation that in particular that most of these folks kind of sing on here. Tech N9ne's pretty good at singing on this particular song, and Chris Calico does a pretty good job on it also. He's good enough at singing as Chris Calico's pretty good at singing, as we know, but Jelly Roll really has a great job on this particular song. So it's just an interesting concept to get this one. This is definitely just something that probably needs to be on the radio a lot more. This would be a great song to hear on the radio nowadays times. I realized that Jelly Roll was more bubbling around this particular time, but still a good enough concept to get some of these in particular, I'd have to say. So that's a nice one. I Need You is another highlight. This is the second single, at least another one that had a music video for it. This is like a haunting kind of overcast torment of a song, I'd have to say. Pretty good concept for that one. It's like a good ruminating gem, I would have to say. This just reminds me of Tech N9ne. I would definitely feel like, and this is just a good underground pop type hit. So a lot of this is just pretty malaise. If you like the stuff like Tech N9ne, King Gordy, some of those type folks, Bizarre, some of those type pitches as far as that horrorcore type stuff, but just in a more haunting type sense and like like some underground pop type feels. This is some great variations. I feel like I Need You and Nothing Left at All are pretty similar type ones. Just some underground pop that just works pretty heavily, I'd have to say. So this is just some great blue collar type stuff just to get within that pitch. Just the Tech N9ne type feel of like Waffle House type music, stuff like that. Just kind of ruminating. It's kind of 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock p.m. type malaise. Just got done with works and stuff like that. Just kind of in a more kind of hustler's mentality of like, this particular album is just kind of some urban kind of hustlers, makeshift blue collar type stuff. I would have to say in particular, all of these singles really do a great job of conveying that particular blue collar type sound just within an urban sense. So it's just a dope enough concept to get those sorts of pitches. Jelly Roll, Tech N9ne, some of those type folks that just work on these particular songs. So Creature, I Need You, Nothing Left at All are all some highlights just for that urban kind of makeshift sense, I'd have to say. So Nothing Left at All is another good highlight just within that sense, another good single to kind of get. Very similar to I Need You, like I was saying. It's like a morose kind of workaday living of a song, I'd have to say. This is just a good, grim blue collar times of a song I would definitely feel like. This is just some regular commute and junction. And the song is just some regular commute and junction, I'd have to say. So it's a dope enough concept to get some of these. Once again, these are just some malaise, kind of overcast day type tunes. I would definitely feel like this real cloudy type days, just stuff like that. Just Waffle House type music, going to Starbucks, possibly something like that. Just kind of a more malaise type after effect, just smoking a swish or something that relative pitch, hitting up the gas station, hitting up Burger King, some of those type places. Just more kind of just urban type pitches as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. I really do like Jelly Roll in this particular song. This is a real nice one. Like I like Witsit Chapel, but it's a little bit, it's commercial just within the sense. I'm glad that Jelly Roll didn't sell out on Witsit Chapel, but I would have to say concept with this particular one, he just has a lot more edge and compelling character on here. Now the thing about Jelly Roll on this particular album is he was somewhat modernized. I think he realized that he was about to blow up a lot more. It's just kind of the pitch that some of that more modernized kind of just with the times and kind of just daily living, and you just got to take your lumps, and that type mentality is on here somewhat, but not quite as full blown. And I'm glad that Jelly Roll didn't really do that on like Witsit Chapel either, to some of those particular type pitches. It's just on here in certain doses, just kind of concept that's not like Jelly Roll drinks, Jelly Roll smokes, some of that type of stuff. He does get fucked up and stuff like that, but he realizes that this is kind of like a way to wrestle with your demons just within that pitch. Not that I feel like, you know, drug use is wrestling with demons, but he kind of feels that way just within that pitch. But I would still have to say some good enough concepts to get some of these just within particular, but there is some modernized type mentalities just for like folks that are kind of more steadfast and not quite as like full blown forlorn and just within that pitch. It has supposed was dope enough concept. Tears Could Talk is the fourth music video. This is another highlighted one. This is like a woozy kind of overcast mid-tempo breeze of a song. I'd have to say pretty nice pop to get that one in particular. This is like some more underground pop. I'd have to say real nice one. This one's probably the most bluesy of this one's probably the most popish and the most upbeat out of the 4 music videos for this particular album. I'd have to say it's just a catchy kind of day after hours haze of a song. I'd have to say this is pretty good for some Travers. So I want to say that one of the folks on this particular song was one of Jelly Roll's kids. I'd have to suppose pretty dope concept to get that one particular. Just adds an extra kind of haunting vibe to this particular song as far as that pitch kind of goes along with it. Just to have like a kid on there just conveying that particular concept as far as just having the problems and the struggles. Because Jelly Roll is definitely pretty malaise on here. Just like with Ballads of the Broken, that was a really kind of malaise and morose type album. That was pretty breakout hit album back in 2021. But just the concept of saying that there's just some good malaise on here, a lot of good stuff. I mean, I do kind of wish that Jelly Roll would have at least had like a nightclub song, something like that, a dance record, some of those type pitches. It's not really on here. Most of this is just kind of makeshift, kind of ruminating, I would have suppose, just within a somber and kind of sullen type sense. But I do like that particular concept. It's just kind of concept that you do wish that Jelly Roll would step out a bit. Closest that this album kind of gets to that and just stepping out in like a more lively type sense, just we're getting fucked up but having a good time with it, is Jesus and Rock and Roll. It's one of the few songs that kind of has that particular pitch. But for the most part, this is just kind of malaise, kind of anguish, but it works. It's just as compelling. Jelly Roll has the character to be able to do it. So that's the concept. So basically, there's 12 songs on this particular album, and I would have to say out of those 12, I wound up recommending 9. So we'll go ahead and talk about the 9 songs I recommend here. Basically, they would be Creature, I Need You, Nothing Left at All, Tears Could Talk, Bottle and Mary Jane, Staring at a Stranger, Pill Talking, Suicide, and Jesus and Rock and Roll. So talk about some of these. Like, I feel like Jesus and Rock and Roll is a pretty good highlighted one. I would definitely have to say it's like a seedy kind of glitzy night activity of a song, I would have to say. This is kind of like a seedy, kind of glitzy night activity glaze of a song. I'd have to say good concept for that in particular. It's just like a mid-pace kind of social fare. I'd have to say just like a mid-social circle, something like that. Not like a ton of people, not like an ass load of people as far as that pitch kind of happens, but just enough. 3, 4, 5 folks, just something like that. Just enough to have like a powwow smoke session, something that relative pitch. I'd have to suppose. Lil White's on this song, which works pretty well. I'd have to suppose. Definitely like that particular concept. This is just a smoke one kind of outing fun, I'd have to say. So it's just some good concept to get this one in particular. Definitely appreciate this one. This is probably the one with the most liveliness on this particular album. I'd say maybe the bottom is kind of one of those type ones. There is a trap record on here that I don't recommend. I don't recommend the bottom because I just didn't like the trap type fare of that particular song. But I would have to say that Jesus and Rock and Roll is a pretty good lively type one. Jelly Roll was still kind of anguished on this particular song. He was just kind of going along with it, just kind of being like, yeah, I'm gonna get fucked up, but I have regrets about it. But it's just kind of the concept as far as trying to say and stuff that it does kind of have some of that glitzy type nightlife. I feel I do kind of miss the I do kind of miss the days of whiskey, weed, and Waffle House where Jelly Roll was kind of excited about these particular type times as far as getting torched and that sort of pitch as far as that kind of happens. I feel like the anguish is just kind of suitable for like a pop rap type. I feel like the anguish is just kind of suitable for like a pop rap type record just because it's the conveyance of just being able to say that getting fucked up all the time is not the full blown thing that you want to do, but it's just kind of a disappointing concept. There's just not some good kind of turn up type songs where you're just amidst like the night having like a fiery type time. But Jesus and Rock and Roll is like the closest thing to that. Pill Talking's a pretty highlighted one. This is like a country type tune, I'd have to say. This is like a poppy kind of country hip hop malaise of a song, I'd have to say. This is an out and about kind of traverse stretcher, I would definitely feel like. And this is also good for some residential blazer feels, I just would have to say. This is a taste of the stuff that he would go on to do on Witsit Chapel, I'd have to suppose. Pretty good concept, get these in particular, just because this is just some good affable kind of Jelly Roll just within that pitch. This kind of, I mean, some of these songs feel like Tech N9ne. Some of these songs feel like Tech N9ne afterthoughts, but some of these kind of have like some of that country type appeal and stuff like that as he would blossom to be later on, I'd have to suppose. Pill Talking is a good example of that, I'd have to say. But some of these do have some good highlight type pitch. Staring at a Stranger is a definite nice one. This has Staring at a Stranger is a pretty nice one. This has one of his old pals, Struggle Jennings, on there. I'm gonna have to get to some of his music as far as that pitch can have with it. But this is a nice one. This is like a glimmering kind of night jazz of a song, I'd have to say. It's like a good smoke a sweet type tune, I would have to say. I definitely feel like this is just kind of a malaise kind of night owl fanfare of a song, I'd have to say. This has one of the best beats on this particular album, I'd have to say, but that's not really. Most of this album is pretty excellently produced, I'd have to say. Just the malaise and kind of overcast I feel this particular album is just full blown excellent. But this is definitely a highlighted one, just in like in a more rap type sense. This is more of like a standard rap type song, not quite as full blown singing as much. But I would have to say this is a pretty highlighted one. Definitely like the glimmering type appeal. It's definitely more night oriented. This one's not as much of like a. This is kind of like a relative kind of. Staring at a Stranger is kind of like a relative kind of house party type cut. This would be a good one to pair up with Jesus and Rock and Roll. I'd have to say just a more hip hop type oriented type one. Just real night, just real good for like some night owl type fare. I'd have to say just some good concepts for that. Doesn't have as much pop rap kind of appeal, I'd have to say, or underground pop. Bottle and Mary Jane's another highlighted one. This is more underground type pop, typical of like the singles like I Need You and Nothing Left at All, some of those type pitches as far as that kind of goes. This is like a simmering kind of late day work shift kind of malaise, I'd have to say. Good concept for that. This is like some good post grunge like rock chart. This is like a good post grunge like rock chart hit, I'd have to suppose, and this is just a pretty dope song. So I definitely feel like some of these. Jelly Roll was really trying to aim for the charts and break out. Jelly Roll was really trying to aim for the charts and break out as far as that pitch kind of happened along with it. And it actually worked pretty well. A lot of these just have a lot of appeal. And on Spotify, this is a pretty popular album. This has like songs that have over 20 and 30 and 50 million plays as far as that pitch kind of has with it. Just some great stuff to kind of see on here. Just got some interesting type stuff that works pretty heavily, I'd have to suppose. So this is a pretty popular album, definitely a pretty casual type album. The social score is going to get a pretty rave score, I'd have to say, but it's just some good stuff. Underground pop that works pretty well, and this has like a Tech N9ne type feel and this overall Waffle House type music type feel that just hits pretty heavily. Another good highlight on here is Suicide. It's definitely like a hazy kind of evening glimmer of a song, I'd have to say. This is like a nice mid-tempo snap that this song particularly kind of has, and this is just like an underground kind of pop. This is some more underground pop, I'd have to say. This is radio ready, and this is just a taste of some grim workaday, I'd have to suppose. So really, yeah, Suicide is just another underground pop type pitch that works just like the singles in the first half of the album as far as that pitch kind of goes along with it. Just pop ready, radio ready, just within that relative pitch. Just another malaise type, anguish type one for an overcast day, I'd have to suppose. Just another good highlight just within that sense, I'd have to say. Pretty good stuff. So talk about the three songs I don't recommend on here. Basically, the bottom is just kind of a trap type cut that just didn't work that well. I kind of feel like Jelly Roll didn't blend that well with trap. I mean, he probably could have, but it just didn't fit the theme of this particular album. I'd have to say it was just kind of a clumsy blunder type one that just didn't work that well. Didn't really like the lyric composition. I didn't really appreciate the lyric composition of Life. That one was kind of one trying to talk about take your lumps and take life on the chin, that sort of stuff. Just didn't really appreciate the concept of it. Even if Jelly Roll was talking about getting fucked up on the song, it was just kind of a meld of one that was trying to get you to face your demons and stuff like that. It just was not quite as affable one. I mean, there are other songs that kind of have that pitch, but this is just kind of one that was more modernized. Just didn't appreciate the concept of that one as much. And I'd have to say Love Me was just kind of a pop type tune that just didn't really have a good affable type feel. This one just didn't have the malaise about it. This was missing something. It was just kind of a vanilla type tune. It was just kind of a vanilla type tune and one of the more awkward songs on this particular album, I suppose, which is not saying that badly just because there's not really that many awkward songs in here, but it's just kind of the concept. So me recommending 9 songs out of 12 on this particular album, I'm going to go ahead and give this album like a 9.25 25 out of 10. That's really extremely good. That's really extremely good. I'd have to say just missed getting a 10 out of 10 by just one song. If I had liked Life a little bit better, if they had not modernized that song as much, I probably would have given this album like a 10 out of 10. Just real affable. The character that Jelly Roll has on this particular album is just extremely good, real compelling. The ruminating is excellent. There's just some malaise on here that just hits pretty heavily, and there just weren't folks doing this apart from Tech N9ne and some of those folks in his camp back in those particular days. This is just a good underground pop type tune that just kind of modernizes and just commercializes that particular sound that Tech N9ne had been trying to do for like the past 20 years. I mean, Tech N9ne is of course popular and he does it excellently, but Jelly Roll is pretty good at it too. Pretty good concept. I would have to say the social score, I think I'm going to go ahead and give like the social score like a 10 out of 10 just because all these songs are just hit pretty, all these songs hit pretty heavily. I'd have to suppose just some excellent concepts just to get these in particular. This kind of malaise and ruminating just works pretty well. The characters just off the scale as far as that pitch can have. So there's just some good stuff just for some outing type fare, just some malaise of just kind of getting crunk and stuff like that just within the pitch of some ruminating, some Waffle House type music, some stuff like that, just some breezy kind of day-to-day type stuff just within an anguish kind of sense and just kind of the concept of just just taking this day-to-day type fare, but just kind of being a little bit just kind of aggy about it, just not quite as much of a full-blown kind of chipper and just kind of optimistic type mode. It's just kind of concept. I feel like that particular pitch just has an interesting type snap about it that just has the affability. I mean, Jelly Roll does cut loose on here. There are some good moments that he is having fun and stuff like that. He just has a lot of regrets and kind of atonement about it. It's just kind of concept about it. The only real thing that this album lacked was just like a dance club kind of hit and like a nightclub type song. Tech N9ne would at least do that. It's too bad that Jelly Roll didn't. That's pretty much like this. It's just peanuts to an elephant for that relative pitch. For the most part, this is a pretty damn near classic and definitely one of the best albums of the 2020s in rap music and underground pop, I'd have to say. So that's a good concept. So in terms of the future, like Jelly Roll dropped an album in the summer of 2023 called Wits at Chapel. So that's the recent one. I reviewed that back in December. I'm going to get to some more Jelly Roll as far as that pitch kind of happens. We'll see what happens with this next album. He's probably going to work on something. Maybe it'll come out in 2025. Maybe it'll come out in 2024. He's kind of on tour and stuff like that. So we'll definitely get some more Jelly Roll. I think this more sound can be fleshed out a lot more. We'll just have to see some interest in. We'll just have to see some more interesting stuff that goes along with it. But I've definitely got a lot more Jelly Roll reviews that are going to come out soon enough as far as that pitch kind of goes. So yeah.